From the WGBH newsroom, I'm Adam Reilly, and you're watching another installment of The Scrum, our ongoing conversation about politics in Boston and across Massachusetts. I'm joined today, as I often am, by WGBH political analyst Peter Kadzis and WGBH political analyst and Boston Magazine contributing editor David Bernstein. Guys, thanks for being here as always. Let's talk a bit about the Boston mayor's race, which is now what, under 5 weeks away? Is my math right? I counted correctly on my fingers. Yep. Okay. David, you've got a new piece up, maybe a couple new posts up on your blog for Boston Magazine, talking about polls in the Boston mayor's race. What are you? Tell us about these.
Well, it's two different ways of looking at where the race stands. One is that I polled Boston insiders, Boston political insiders, who have done a very good job in my past polling of predicting what would happen in the preliminary. So I polled them this week.
This is like operatives, former candidates, office holders.
Office holders, yeah, you got the idea, yeah. So 55% of them think that Marty Walsh is going to win, and 45% think that John Connolly is going to win. So pretty evenly split, but a little edge towards Marty Walsh.
Now, who they pick in the prelim? Was it Walsh to top the ticket? Or?
They had Walsh, initially Walsh and then Connolly as the top two, and then Connolly just slightly ahead of Walsh when we got a little bit closer. But both of those clearly ahead of everyone else, and that's of course what turned out to be the case. Now, I also have broken news about an internal poll that John Connolly's campaign conducted, and of course everyone can take internal campaign polls for with a grain of salt. But this is a poll that they did to sort of gauge the state of the race, the beginning of this week essentially, and that poll showed 44% of the voters planning to vote for Connolly, 32% planning to vote for Walsh, and then 22% undecided. So a little edge heading out of the preliminary, very similar to the edge that a Suffolk poll showed about a week before the preliminary when they tested that head-to-head.
Peter, do those numbers sound plausible to you, or which set of numbers sounds more plausible?
Well, I'm not surprised by the snapshot from the political pros. I've been asking around, mainly people connected with city government, and they think Connolly's will win, not is ahead, because he has the most room to grow. When I switch and talk to people, who aren't affiliated with city government, they have a sense of Walsh having some momentum.
Now, when you say Connolly having room to grow, do you mean add people to his coalition that weren't there for the prelim? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, although in hard terms, I'm talking about gain more voters. They think Walsh is closer to having topped out. See, I think the Connolly campaign is being a little quieter right now. I've gotten a lot of evidence of neighbors who voted for Connolly in the primary now calling their neighbors to try to win him over, where I think the Walsh campaign is being a little more public about it, if that makes sense.
Now, really quickly, and then I know you have some news coming out of City Hall that we got to talk about, but were your polls taken before or after, were these polls taken before or after the dust up over the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association, that big pay raise that they were given in arbitration?
I would say it was sort of while, both were done sort of while that was all going on, and of course it's still going on, and we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, and could have a real effect.
All right, now I was out of town last week, and I was reading the candidate statements about the BPPA arbitration award from the West Coast, and I thought that both of them were doing kind of a miserable job. John Connolly seeming to me very timid, and Marty Walsh seeming to not really know what point he wanted to make aggressively. He seemed to be all over the map. Am I right that these two mishandled it, or am I oversimplifying here?
Well, my view is that Connolly's MO was emerging as being very open and quiet at the beginning of a controversial issue, then consulting everyone, either going through the motions or legitimately consulting everyone, and then coming out with a Solomon-like decision. Marty Walsh struck me as being all over the map.
And I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
He reminded me of Ray Flynn in one of Ray's bad days, the way he handled this. I would say, so far, I'd give the first round to Connolly.
What about you?
I would agree with that, and I think that Connolly, I think that a lot of people who pay a lot of attention to these things, day by day and almost hour by hour, kind of felt like you did, that sort of, why is he taking so long? Why is John Connolly? But for most people, I think it came across as he took his time, he was judicious, he was mayoral, rather than sort of gut jumping in on something that maybe he then would have to backtrack.
All right.
have to wait.
Brisk signal. Well, let's just really quickly. You've got some interesting news coming out of Boston City Hall. What are you hearing from insiders in the building?
There's a lot of fear and loathing about the city council actually voting on the policeman's contract. But they can turn Monday to WGBH's website and find a full piece for me on that.
All right, so fear and loathing in City Hall is what
Yes.
people should be looking for on Monday. Okay.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the vote doesn't happen until after the election.
Oh, I don't think it will happen till after the election.
All right. Well, check out WGBHnews.org on Monday for Peter Kadzis' take on fear and loathing in City Hall. Peter Kadzis, David Bernstein, thanks as always for being here, guys. Thank you as always for watching the Scrum. I'm Adam Reilly from WGBH. We'll see you again next week.